Right, hello, this is Christian Buckley. I'm here with another MVP Buzz Chat interview, and I'm here with Ben. And Ben, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Ben Weissman. I'm a data platform MVP based in Nuremberg, Germany. I'm a rather new MVP, actually. So I just made MVP March 1st this year. So basically 2 days before the MVP summit. So I did not go this year, but looking forward to meet all of you guys in person next year.
That's a great event. It is, and I would say, especially coming that far. I don't know if you visited Microsoft Campus before.
I did. Like I said, I'm a data platform MVP, and one of the big events for us, besides the Microsoft events, is actually the PaaS Summit, which takes place in Seattle as well, which is always around the October-November timeframe. So yeah, I had a couple of chances to actually visit the campus, but never with the insight that obviously the MVP Summit actually gets here.
And that's what's good. And I always recommend for those that don't get out to the area that often is, definitely pack in that week, try and schedule any other interviews or discussions with Microsoft, with product team members and other folks that'll be there. I mean, it really is a great opportunity. It's always unfortunate when MVPs come in. I just moved 2 years ago from Seattle to Salt Lake, for 12 years there. And I would advise friends coming in from out of town for these summits, like, don't arrive late Sunday night, leave Thursday afternoon. Like, try to stay a little bit longer so that you can enjoy and get engage outside of the summit activities. Well, tell us about a little bit about the data platform MVPs for those that aren't familiar, like myself, with the scope of what do you guys cover?
So the scope of the data platform MVPs, or the data platform stack itself, has actually grown and widened a huge bit over the last couple of years. So it starts, if you want, on the very left end with the DBAs, which do all the admin work, performance tuning, security and stuff. Then it goes to database developers, going over to BI developers, up to the Power BI stack, which kind of then is also bridging the gap from the data platform MVP to the Azure MVPs in parts, and even the data center MVP. So that's where it all gets together, because like pretty much all of the Microsoft programs, obviously also for the data platform part, there is a shift and a momentum growing towards Azure rather from on-prem. But at the same time, there's with SQL Server and everything that comes with it, there's still a huge on-prem product as well. So
right. And it's, I just had a conversation last night. We just met a guy who worked in IT, and he was explaining to me, like, it's almost like he was, and he was more on the SQL Server side of things, but was like apologizing for not moving to the cloud. I'm like, well, I'm not Microsoft, so I understand, it's okay. And you also don't need to apologize. And he was explaining the reasons why his organization had made a conscious decision to remain where they are for a couple of years. But yeah, it's okay. But I think it shows that with as a data platform MVP, is that some of the things that you focus on, cut into other MVP areas, but that, and I'm the same with the things that I do. I mean, there's things, kind of topics that I cover that are over on the Azure side. I'm involved in the blockchain world, and so very much not part of Office apps and services, but deep within Microsoft technologies and other areas, which is normal. Yeah.
And at the same time, you could argue that blockchain is also kind of part of the data platform, not just kind of, but so. And on that Azure thing, I think there's also lots of cultural reasons, like especially here in Western Europe, companies have been very hesitant in moving to the cloud. So we've seen very little momentum in going there over the last couple of years. And just last fiscal year, I just got back from Microsoft Inspire, which is the partner conference, which is a very non-technical conference. But this is where we do all the brainwashing for the beginning of the new fiscal year.
That's right. I like how you phrase that. It was actually kind of light on the brainwashing this year. I was down there, but it was because it's funny, attending Build and typically Ignite. I'm not going to Ignite this year, but attending all of these events is like you're privy to public and some not yet public announcements, and but you can usually get a fairly solid grounding and kind of everything that's going on, and then how Microsoft is going to market with those things. So it's an interesting perspective attending Inspire.
Yeah, one thing they said there is, besides Morocco, Germany was the country in the world with the large growth in Azure. But the main reason for that is not that we did so great last year, but is that we did so poor the years before. Because if you got one customer, it's easy to get to 10 than from 10 to 100. So
Right. Yeah. Well, there definitely is growth, but I think what's happening, and Microsoft admits, while the numbers are all doing great, and but the fact that hybrid kind of took Microsoft by surprise. How many organizations? The large majority in the U.S. It's like close to 70% of organizations from our research, within the collaboration side of things, are employing hybrid strategies. And as part of it is because they've made all those investments. I don't know if it's so much of a trust of the cloud, just of the practical stand of, we've made these investments, they're working, they're delivering the value. We can't just go and move net new onto these new technologies. We've got to transition towards that. And the time that takes, they said, we're not in a rush to go and do that. And so I don't know if you see that on kind of your perspective, and especially in Germany. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are in Germany for hybrid versus pure cloud growth.
I could not tell you, but I'm pretty sure that most companies that currently go towards a cloud strategy will still go hybrid for a couple of years. But more and more people actually see the big value of the cloud. And even if it's just for dev and testing purposes. Like I was just going through the MPP program for AI. Mm-hmm. And for that, I needed a couple of virtual machines with lots of processors and lots of memory and all that.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to be able to scale those things on your own unless you have server farms, at your fingertips. You're not going to be able to.
Plus, even if I had those server farms, I would have to make that huge investment for hardware that I wouldn't need afterwards. And for that, I just came up, provisioned that huge machine and shut it down 2 days after, and it was gone, and the cost was gone as well. And that's right. What more and more people seem to realize, that if you're sending an email, it goes through the same internet where the cloud is, and we're using email on a day-to-day basis. So there is no real need to actually be afraid of it, and there's actually lots of benefits that come with it. And
one thing that's in kind of addressing that FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of moving to the cloud, and I think there's very real concerns around security, compliance, those kinds of things, and so you have to do your homework. You have to understand what that looks like. There's also a feature parity of the things that you've customized and built that could also delay your move to the cloud. All things that you Definitely. Have to take into consideration. I always tell clients, like, don't feel bullied into, like, you must go into. And people say, well, I feel like I'm being left behind. Well, you kind of are. Because, I mean, certainly in the Microsoft space, like, all new development is happening cloud first. And in that direction, doesn't mean that there's not investment still being made in on-prem in certain areas, but that is where innovation is happening the fastest. So, I mean, you have to kind of balance all of those things.
Very true.
Yeah. So, what are some of the topics that you're covering lately? Like, are you out presenting at various conferences and community events, things like that?
I am. So, one of the key topics that I'm passionate about is Biml, the business intelligence markup language. Mm-hmm. So I'm from the data warehousing and BI development field. That's kind of my background. And that's how I actually got into the whole speaking part and all of that. So around 3 years back at PaaS Summit, I met those guys from Verigen to actually develop Biml. So for those not aware what Biml is, it is basically a markup language that you can use to generate SSIS packages or analysis services, cubes, or models. So you basically add a layer of abstraction on top of it, which you can feed through metadata or so. And that basically means I just have one table that tells me, well, I want to load this table from here to there, and I need this and this logic or transformations in between. And then you just press the magic button and it spits out thousands or hundreds of packages and all that. So it can save a huge amount of time. And I was like, okay, that could actually add real value for us as a company and also to our clients. Mm-hmm. So I got into it and I said, well, there's not many people in Germany actually doing, or at least talking about it. And that's how I got into talking.
Yep.
So my first SQL Saturday was SQL Saturday Vienna on April 1st, 2016.
Yep.
And yeah, 1 year, 11 months later, I got MVP for all these speaking engagements. In between, I wrote about 50 blog posts, mainly around Biml. I wrote a book with a couple of other guys from the mostly MVP community who are also as passionate around Biml from all around the world. So there
So
were,
it's a Biml book.
it's called the Biml book.
Okay. I'll have to go find that. We'll link to it in the blog post around it. But it's so my career actually spent my first almost a decade in data warehousing and all of the front end applications for that. So I've deployed those packages like business objects back in the day. I don't know if you remember, like it was DSS or
ETS.
I think they've rebranded since then, but worked with SAS and a bunch of these other front end modules. But having to go through and in that data warehousing world and working with, I worked a long time ago for the phone company in California. And so working with the various consumer groups. And so we went and built this MART architecture, and we're constantly adding data sources in and merging them and building these subsets to be able to do all this reporting. So I remember how, and as you do, how hard that was to go and merge that data to find this, to give them so that it performed somewhat reasonably, gave them a subset so that they could much more quickly go do reports and other things off that. It was, that was just a different world than it is today.
Yeah, and the thing with something like Biml is it just takes out the repetitive part, because usually you end up doing, once you found the way you want to do something, you have to do it over and over again, because you need to do it for like 10 different groups or 15 different tables or whatever. And it just takes out that repetitiveness. And what we've seen is it does not necessarily shorten the project, but it allows us to actually focus in the project on stuff that is more fun and creates more valuable for everyone involved. So
well, that's
it definitely made working more fun in the data warehousing part for us.
Well, I get that part. I have zero experience with Biml. I've been out of that space for many years, but of course that it's still really relevant today. It's funny, when I was at Microsoft and I left in 2009, and I used to just joke about the fact that in the Microsoft ecosystem, like, we don't have DBAs. Like, where are the DBAs? Were they just rebranded somewhere? I was like, we have that. Now, obviously in the SQL world, I mean, they all were there, and titles changed and things, but that technology or that type of role for organizations, as we're getting more and more, maybe you call them data analysts, data scientists now, but are doing a lot of that same kind of work. I mean,
exactly.
So what are the types of customers that you're working with around these? I mean, how are they using this technology? Maybe you could give some examples.
So customers we work for are usually from the mid-market, upper mid-market part. So we actually do also a lot of workbench work for them, meaning that we actually build lots of those warehouses for them. So most of them would not have like a department where they actually are able, either from a capacity or knowledge point of view, to actually build that stuff themselves. So we kind of do outsourcing parts for them, and they actually come from all kind of verticals. So we got a manufacturer for child seats, we got breweries, we got real estate administrators, we pretty much everything, I would say. So right now we're involved in around 80 different projects with 10 people. So that also gives you a perspective. Everyone working for at least 8, usually more customers at the same time, how small some of them actually have to be, and why it doesn't make sense for them to actually employ an own department or even own FTE for that.
But you think of that, I mean, it really does touch across even every area within an organization. I mean, you need to, I think of my little, company with 4 employees, is that, we look at data from a sales and marketing standpoint. We go and look at, of course, we do research. So we have subsets of data in a lot of different areas, depending on the projects that are going on. But we're constantly, and we partner with companies. Like, our closest partner around data is Tygraph. So John White, MVP, and it's kind of hard to miss him. He has giant features, so he's giant-ish. He's not that big, but just fascinating conversations going in and looking at, the potential for, data into each areas of the company. One of the biggest changes in Microsoft internally, as they kind of restructured, one of the things that Satya wanted to change was that every product team, every organization had these data scientists, had people that own the telemetry into the features, into the products, into even the market, the community around their areas of focus, so that they could make data-driven decisions around that. Is that kind of what you do with organizations, depending on the requirements?
Definitely. So also our team is kind of divided like half with people that more got a background in economics and people that more have an IT background, to really be able to understand all these processes, including all their aspects that they actually have in driving the value and success or failure within a company, basically.
That's a key. That's an important point, because you could come in as a technologist and say, here's the tools, here's how we structure it, there you go. And then an organization says, great, we have shiny new stuff.
Exactly. So we kind of consider ourselves more like a trusted advisor. So usually we also don't think in projects, but we consider our customers being our partners, which means I've been working with some of my customers for 10, 15 years or longer. So
Wow.
Obviously with different intensities. So from time to time they come up with, we're switching from NAV to AX or from AX to SAP. Don't tell anyone I said that.
I know what all this stuff is. Yeah.
Which obviously means that there's a spike in what we do for them for a certain period, then it may slow down again. But usually we keep working with them for years, or technically forever in most cases.
So let me ask you, because here's it's a point of frustration. In fact, I just described this problem in a conversation last night. There was a neighborhood party, little celebration out, closed off a street, and had fireworks and food all afternoon and stuff. And of course, I'm standing off to the side having IT conversations. Because I saw somebody wearing an Ignite T-shirt, and I'm like, hey, And but we got in and talked about that. Is the fact that when you get in, when you're that close to a client and you're helping them build out the technical, the infrastructure side of that, and then helping them start to understand how to use that and leverage that for that business advisor role, is when they don't listen or take action. Like, that's really hard for me. That aspect of it. And I don't know if you run into that, if you experience the same pains, or if your clients listen to the advice that you give them of how to then utilize those systems. But it's so many projects, when they fail, it's largely due to failure of execution rather than of the platform.
Oh, I agree. We experience that rarely, thankfully, and the reason for that is probably that we usually try to cut it into very small pieces. So when we come to see a potential customer for the first time, we try not to talk about the huge big picture, but what's your biggest pain? How can we help you the quickest? And then he's going to be like, these guys did something in 5 days where everyone told me it's going to take 10 years or it's impossible. Because let's be honest, in many cases, it's not that complicated.
Right.
And well, obviously, on the other hand, there is some real complicated stuff out there which takes longer. But we try to start with something small.
Baby steps. Yeah, the baby step them into that. Right.
Because these baby steps also mean they will say, they solved the last problem, so let's look at the next one.
Right.
First of all, it helps us being able to serve that many customers with a company that small, because obviously if someone would say, well, I want to buy that project with 1,500 days or whatever, all of a sudden it would be like, well, honestly, there is no way we can actually deliver that.
Yeah.
So it helps us, but it also helps them, because that means they won't wait for a year, or even if it's just 6 months, to actually see a result.
Right.
And once they see you solve their first problem, they start listening easier. Yeah. Not all of them, and obviously we'll always have to fight some of those guys in every company, especially those that told everyone it's impossible.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that
for them to become your friends.
Maybe the impossible involves 100 different things that they need to do, and it may be true that all 100 things need to be done. But what happens if you come in and knock off 5, 7, 10 of those small wins initially? What happens is that as that change starts to happen, it also evolves their thinking about the rest of the problem. So the whole problem that they think needs to be solved also shifts, it moves based on their new understanding of what's possible of what you've already delivered. And that's, there's science behind the change management, that
True.
aspect of it, what happens. But that's an important aspect. I take the same approach, which is, let's see what we can address and go and do now. And as we're working towards that big picture, because that's what happens in my experience 9 out of 10 times, is that what they thought was the biggest problem actually shifts and moves once they get some solutions down to this level. It's funny how our understanding changes as progress is made.
Yeah, and also if you do these baby steps, the other thing is, in many cases, they will see what they were trying to do is impossible, but also what they were trying to do doesn't make so much sense. And the only reason they want to do it is because we've always done it this way. Right. We have to do this. Let's discuss for a second what you're actually trying to achieve, and not how you were solving it manually for the last 2 decades, but how right. this could potentially be done in a more efficient way.
Right.
Like same thing. We just had that. I've just started doing a podcast with 2 other MVPs, and it's called Please Talk Data to Me. So we talk around everything around the data platform. And one of the first topics we were talking about was Azure Data Factory, which is a Microsoft product on Azure, which is used to kind of orchestrate data flows in the cloud. So in the beginning, many people, honestly, including me, thought, well, this is SSAS for the cloud, and it's not. And if you're just trying to push into ADF what you were doing in SSAS, you will fail. But if you see, well, this is a completely different approach, and I cannot just take it one by one, but it will potentially solve the same problem in a different, but maybe even better way.
Right.
And that's the same thing where just being, I like that term, trusted advisor. It brings fresh perspective, and they will start.
You just described like just about every single on-prem customization or the built from scratch by a company solution versus moving to the cloud. Sometimes it is, it's not a port this code over and hey, we're now in the cloud, and that's possible in some cases. But it really is a rethinking the way that you've done it, leveraging the latest technologies. That's the whole discussion around business transformation. That's exactly it. That's what it is. Here's what we need to accomplish. Let's step back, get out of the trappings of this is the way that we've always done it. These are the technologies that we've used to solve that business problem. I always phrase it as it's a business analyst activity to first assess and understand what are we trying to accomplish here? What is available to us out in the world? Are there, because sometimes there are not the tools, features, things in the cloud that can do what you need done, hence your on-prem or a hybrid solution. But it's business transformation takes sometimes a rethinking of how you're solving the problems you're solving, because there might be a better way that is more scalable, more easily supported for the future, that you're just, you're locked in a very expensive cycle that's limited growth today. Yeah. Anyway. I know there's a lot of fun topics around here. Well, I know that we're kind of on time here, but what's the best way, Ben, that people can get in touch with you? If they want to find out more about what you're doing?
Well, if they want to find more about what I'm doing in the Biml area, there's my blog, biml.blog, so that's pretty easy. And otherwise, I'm on Twitter @bweissman. And people my DMs are open for everyone, even if they don't follow me. So you don't have to follow me to get in touch with me. And I don't have to follow you, even though I'm happy to follow everyone who follows me. So that's one of the good, easiest ways of getting in touch with me on anything that's data platform and community related. And then obviously also my email, but in emails, personal stuff can easily get lost into that.
Well, like everything. So for those that are finding this video out on YouTube, is that if you go over to buckleyplanet.com, I'll actually have a blog post where I'll provide links to Ben's book and all the various websites and social channels as well. So you can find it through buckleyplanet.com. And I'll definitely, Ben, anything else that you want to include in links and articles and anything else that you'd like me to mention within that post, just send it over and I'll make sure to include that.
Will do.
But, well, thanks a lot for your time, and I hope to see you next March I don't know if you're planning to go. I'll be over in Copenhagen in November, but I think that's my only other European trip except backpacking in Iceland.
I
Probably
will be
won't
in
see both.
Seattle in November because that's when Pass Summit is this year. They've
That's
pushed it
right.
back.
I might see you over there. I might be in town for that. So
Awesome.
we'll definitely have to stay in touch. But thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you.